Supervisor Giacomini, you did a good job on organizing a list of speakers, so thank you for bringing that and bringing this issue to our attention. I don't think that, oh, Mr. Wigginton, you are in the room. Thank you very much for organizing your speakers.
Mr. Chairperson.
We're not going to take I appreciate that, but we're not going to start the conversation from the crowd. Thank you. I did want to also just simply say we're going to, just to finish what we had started earlier, we're going to ask Mr. Simon to come up, and we're going to hear a few words from him. I think the obvious here is that we've heard a lot of great comments and conversation. And we're looking for Mr. Simon to perhaps give us his thoughts on a path forward. Then I'm going to bring it back then to the Board of Supervisors, and I'm going to, out of courtesy for bringing the item forward, move to Supervisor Giacomini for some continuing comments at that point. So I would ask this of you. We've spent 3.5 hours listening, concentrating. So this is our time to have that conversation. We would appreciate it if you would allow us to do that, and we'll move forward. Okay? Mr. Simon, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members, ladies and gentlemen of the audience. Thank you for the opportunity to provide a little bit of response. I think that's appropriate. You have, as you indicated, listened attentively to a lot of different perspectives and points of view. I'm going to keep my comments very practical, on the practical side of things, and very brief. I'm not here to refute the information that has been presented to the board. In fact, I respect the opinions that have been expressed and the stories involving empirical observations with regard to what people have seen and experienced with relation to this geoengineering topic. I do not want to marginalize the issue. However, what I would like to do for the board is to put the role of the Shasta County Air Quality Management District into perspective. I think it's quite clear that there have been calls by members of the audience, concerned citizens and sincere concerned citizens, calls to the board to take local action, and what I want to do is to provide a little bit of context in terms of what the Air Quality Management District role is, what regulations and hierarchy of the bureaucracy, so to speak, that we operate under, and what our limitations are, and so that the board, in considering what action you might be inclined to take, would have that information as well. There are several federal and state codes, rules and regulations that the local Air Quality Management District operates under. Title 42 of the U.S. Code dealing with public health, social welfare, and civil rights. The California Health and Safety Code, the U.S. and the California EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and the California Air Resources Board. These codes and agencies provide rules, regulations, policies, and limitations under which the Shasta County Air Quality Management District operates. What does the Air Quality Management District do? We regulate stationary sources. Those would be sources that include above-ground fuel storage tanks, asphalt plants, diesel engine generators, spray booths, cleaners, and a myriad of other kinds of brick and mortar, so to speak, sources of air pollution, as well as major commercial and industrial sources. The Air Quality Management District also issues burn permits to citizens, to commercial and agricultural operators, develop and implement local district rules, participate in the development of region-wide, Sacramento Valley-wide attainment plans, maintain monitoring equipment and reporting related to criteria pollutants that are monitored and reported on a regular basis, and administers grants to things like the school bus program, where we provide federal and state money to local school districts to replace or retrofit older diesel engine buses to clean up the air from those vehicles. There are a number of other grant programs that are aimed at the same kind of purpose, which is to clean up the air locally by implementing these grant programs. There are several things that the Shasta County Air Quality Management Board or District does not do. and I think those are important to understand too. The Air Quality Management District does not regulate or enforce vehicle emission standards, that is, vehicles that drive on the roads, vehicles that are off the roads, or aircraft. Aircraft emissions are regulated by the U.S. EPA and the Department of Transportation. In fact, in U.S. Code Title 42, there is a mandate indicating that the Secretary of Transportation prescribes regulations for controlling aircraft emissions to be carried out by the U.S. EPA, and further states, as some have indicated here in their discussions with other air quality management districts, that no state or subdivision thereof may adopt or attempt to enforce any standard respecting emissions of any air pollutant from any aircraft or engine thereof. And it goes on to speak to how that would be enforced. I think it's pretty clear that while the board may share some of the concerns and in fact be inclined to take some kind of action in response to the concerns of the constituents that have spoken here, I think that the ultimate issue goes beyond the Shasta County Air Quality Management District, certainly, and perhaps even beyond the Board of Supervisors. However, I will conclude in a moment with some suggestions as to what the board might want to consider. What have we done locally? In 2008, as was mentioned by the chairman in the beginning of this meeting, we sent a full DVD of the public testimony from a number of people on August 5th, 2008 to the Air Pollution Control Board meeting. We sent that to the California Air Resources Board and the U.S. EPA, indicating that there were concerns expressed, and please make note of those. Data for aluminum, strontium, and other species that have been mentioned today are locally available through the what is called IMPROVE, or the Interagency Monitoring of Protected Visual Environments website. The nearest monitoring station for that program is right in Lassen National Park. And the object of that is to implement is to monitor and to prevent visual impairment through man-made sources to the protected areas within the country, and Lassen Park is one of those stations. So they're looking for various constituents that are produced by man's activities, capital M, with that might impair the visual clarity of those protected and very special places. There's about 150 plus sites throughout the country, including Hawaii, the West Coast, and throughout the country, where these monitoring stations are, and there are policies developed based on the monitoring data that indicate, what ought to be done in terms of cleaning up the air and the visual pristineness of those special places. Aluminum and those other constituents are among those that are monitored. Locally, we have also implemented programs to reduce local diesel emissions, and although we do not regulate or set the standards for diesel vehicles, we are, again, part of that grant program, involved in programs that would reduce the amount of diesel vehicle emissions by either replacing or retrofitting diesel engines through grant programs that are administered locally. Diesel emissions could be another source of the species of chemical constituents that are being talked about by the folks here as well. Let me finally conclude with regard to the context for the Air Quality Management District with the budget. Every year over the past years, and perhaps as many as 5 years, we have relied on reserves to fund the full implementation of the programs that the Air Quality Management District has undertaken and committed to. In the fiscal year 14-15, for instance, we anticipate that we will be using probably in excess of $300,000 of those reserves in order to fulfill the obligations that we have already taken within the Air Quality Management District. I say that, again, to put this in context. Although the total budget for the Air Quality Management Division within my department is about $1.4 million, anticipated in 14-15, we are 300,000 of that is already over what we have allocated in terms of anticipated revenues. There is no real money, no discretionary money in that budget to introduce new programs, especially ones that do not come with a funding mechanism at either the local, state, or federal level. Let me conclude by saying that We stand ready to respond to the Board of Supervisors and to provide whatever information you believe would be relevant in your deliberations. I would suggest, as we did back in 2008, that we send information to those state and federal agencies that are a little bit closer to the source in terms of where the regulations come from and where the authority to do anything about it comes from, and that would be the Cal EPA, the US EPA, and Cal Air Resources Board, to at least let them know that you, as the Board of Supervisors of Shasta County, are listening to your constituents. To some extent, you share those concerns. You would like some additional information, perhaps, and my department, the air quality staff, would be happy to work with you as the board in drafting some response or some letter to those other agencies, if that is a direction that you are considering going.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. Any questions for Mr. Simon while he's here? Supervisor Giacomini, to be followed by Supervisor Chappelle.
Hello, should we get an opportunity to respond to that dog?
Excuse me?
That was lies.
Let me repeat myself. We had 3 hours of listening completely filled with respect. This is our time to have the conversation. Whether you agree or disagree, ma'am, would you allow me to continue my conversation? We expect, no, more than expect, we demand you offer the same respect that we gave you. We would like to have the opportunity to address this as a board, and we'd like to get there. That means we want to hear from the people we have asked to address us. That's our responsibility. Now, I would like you to simply allow us to continue this. Can we do that? Yes. Can we do that? We'd appreciate it very much so. Thank you so much. So, Supervisor Giacomini, you wanted to address the board.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Baugh. Well said. Rick, when the letter in 2008 went to those entities, did we ask for a response first, and did we get one?
The letter did not explicitly ask for information or a response, and to my knowledge, no, we did not get one.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so, well, do you want to get to other questions first, Chairman Baugh? And then...
We can do either way.
Okay, go ahead.
I can move to Supervisor Chappelle next. Thank you, Supervisor Chappelle.
Thank you, Les Baugh, Chairman Les Baugh. Mr. Simon, I'm just kind of concerned about if we address
Supervisor,
these...
I'll get you to scoot closer to your microphone so everybody can hear you.
Am I better now?
There
okay.
you go. Thank you, sir.
I have a bad habit of doing that, I
Yes.
think. The entities that you said that we could address these issues to, the EPA, the Cal EPA, and the CARB, they will not provide us with the information that we would want that would be correct. Their information is going to be skewed. So if we end up doing something like this, I would like to be able to put our information in those letters and address it in a way that says, these are our findings in Shasta County. Can you please explain to us why we're finding these levels? If we don't find the levels, then we don't need to go forward. But if we find the levels, then we need at least to ask them, because we don't need a boilerplate answer back from these entities. And that's what I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Chappelle. Supervisor Modi?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Mr. Simon, you talked about, well, number one, about the reserve level of the budget we have. You mentioned using $300,000 this year. How much do we have left in our reserves?
The reserves are department-wide, and I don't have a figure right off the top of my head of exactly what those reserves are.
Can you either ballpark it, or can you tell me when you think that reserves is going to run out?
Yeah, I think that probably within the next 2 to 3 years, the reserve for that particular division will be used.
Okay, thank you. The other question I have is, we talked about the county and particularly getting the readings from like Lassen Park, but other things that we've done here. You've talked about particulate matter in this at a certain size level, and I've heard PM5 and 10 being tossed around a lot. Today we heard a lot, and as we have in the past, about this nanoparticulate matter. Does any of our testing measure that kind of stuff?
It does not measure nanoparticles. The monitoring systems that we have measure PM10, particulate matter, at 10 microns and then 2.5.
Okay. And do you know if the testing at Lassen Park, does it measure for nanoparticulate?
They get readings on fine aluminum, and I can't tell you right off the top of my head what the measurement of those particles would be, but presumably it is the kind of constituent that is of concern.
Okay. I would ask, I really am very disappointed here. You guys are gasping, you're making faces, you're turning up your noses, some of you. Chairman Ball, not all of you, but Chairman Ball has asked you to be respectful. We certainly did not do that during any of your speaking, and it's very disappointing that you've conducted yourself so well, and then you get to the end here, and if you don't like what people say, that you do that. I don't understand that, quite frankly.
Our city officials to lie to us.
And you're the perfect example.
I'm going to call for a 20-minute break. We will meet again at 5 minutes after 2. Thank you. We are now at recess. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're back from our recess. And Mr. Simon, if we can get you to come back up, we have an additional question for you. Supervisor Modi. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. I just want to follow up with we mentioned that some of the measurements they do at Lassen Park, and you thought were for some finer material, but you weren't quite sure what that might be. And my request of you is that if you would try to see if you can find out at what level, what particle size that they are testing for up there, and that might go for any other areas around here that we're doing testing. If you not quite sure what it is, some stuff for us you probably know, but for like the federal level, if you could try to find out what that might be.
Right. Actually, I do have a response for that. And what they do is they have a filtration system that measures, and what I had said, our filtration system monitors for PM 2.5 and PM 10. And what that actually means is that everything that it captures up to 2.5. And so what they have at Lassen Park as part of the improved system, which is again nationwide, is filtration systems that capture all particles of all sizes up to whatever that filter is calibrated for. And so it's very likely that they would get some of the elemental constituents that are of concern as well, and then they do a full analysis of that filter to find out all of the constituents that are there.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to specifically ask them if there are testing for nanoparticles.
I will do that.
Thank you. That's all I have for now, Chair.
And I have a question for you, Mr. Simon. What would it take for us to test for nanoparticles in Shasta County? I'm not talking about the resources available, but the technology. Where would we go for that information if you were directed so by this board or by another board? How would you handle that request?
Yeah, I would suspect that it would be a matter of acquiring the monitoring equipment and the filtration systems that would be capable of capturing that in a form that could then be analyzed. The cost of that I do not know at this point, and whether that would be equipment that we currently have and perhaps could recalibrate, or whether we'd have to start from scratch. I'd have to get back to you on that.
That's fair. Are there other questions for Mr. Simon?
Yeah, if I could just add on to that you also might then find out if it's less expensive to just contract that out or something.
Okay. Other questions for Mr. Simon? Mr. Chappelle.
Thank you, Chair
Supervisor
Ball.
Chappelle, my apologies.
That's okay. I just had one question, and it wasn't more of an observation or anything, is that maybe what we should do is wait till Mr. Simon can get the information we need to test for the nanoparticles before we go forward with anything. If that makes any sense, then we know what kind of expenses we're up against, and we know what we have to do. There may be some people in the audience who can make some suggestions also. Get a hold of Mr. Simon and come forward with some information then that way we've got some legitimate information that we've got, it's ours, that we can make an analysis on. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any additional questions for Mr. Simon, please?
I'm sorry, if I could just follow up a little bit, Mr. Chairman. I will provide that information to the board, but what it'll also involve is, what would constitute a legitimate testing procedure. It's not a matter of simply taking measurements, I don't think, at any one point on the ground, or at a particular elevation. If people are interested in establishing a cause and an effect, we can measure the constituents that we find on the ground, but that does not point directly to any particular source of those emissions unless we can further identify those. Really, to have solid information that is irrefutable is probably going to be way beyond anything that we could contemplate involving aircraft and monitoring in the air and clouds and those kinds of things to actually trace it back to the actual source. But we can certainly I think, investigate what it would take to verify some of the claims that have been made with regard to elevated levels of some of these elemental constituents.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. Supervisor Giacomini?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Baugh. Thank you, Mr. Simon. I appreciate that. And I would have to respectfully kind of disagree, I think, with Bill a little bit. Because I think the point that Rick is getting to, which anybody that is going to be making decisions based on science, it has to be replicable. You have to make sure that you've got appropriate protocols in place. So I would rather investigate fully. I'm sorry?
Very good. Right into your mic as you're turning your head. I think we're kind of losing you there.
Into my mic. Okay.
There you go.
I would rather investigate fully what the park system has set up to see what we can gain, information-wise from that information to be able to, then put together information that we've received, put together information from the park on their monitoring, and then try to write appropriate letters and ask for action from these agencies in a response. So that's kind of where I'm headed. But
thank you. Supervisor Modi?
Yeah, I agree with Supervisor Giacomini, and I think the important thing is what Mr. Simon is referring to as well is you need a baseline, and to just go out and, we could go out and test at Iron Mountain and find out we have all kinds of bad things there, but you need to have a baseline, and I think hopefully maybe at Lassen Park they've done it for a lot of years. We can go back and look at what has changed over the last 5, 10, 20 years. Hopefully there'll be other places that have data like that that can give us a longer timeline.
Additional comments? Supervisor Kehoe?
Thank you, Chairman Baugh. Let me make some general observations and then a couple of specific ones. Today, the Shasta County Board of Supervisors has been the beneficiary of some sincere, passionate, and knowledgeable comments. And I thank you for those. I specifically want to call to your attention the outstanding work that is being done on this issue by Mr. Dane Wigington and Ms. Kathy Kresser. They've done a wonderful job. I think your comments outlining what the AQMD can do and can't do are valid. And I think the board has to be mindful about those. But I will tell you, especially in the arena of the U.S. EPA, I am disappointed in that, let me finish please before you might want to take your hands down. I am disappointed because there was a man running for U.S. Congress that said he's one of us. Is his representative here today? Did you see his representative here today? I did not. And I think it would have been productive and helpful had his representative, LaMalfa's representative, been here today to listen to this heartfelt testimony. I am in agreement with my colleagues about sending letters and a call for action, but I would hope that we could go a step further. in that, and you tell me, Mr. Lees, if this is possible, which I think it is, I would like for us to send a copy of this video where all of you spoke today, all 2.5 or 3 hours of this testimony. I would like that video to be sent to our senators and our U.S. representatives, and also our representatives in the state of California.
We'll do that.
Let them listen to the passion that came out of this meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Kehoe. Supervisor Giacomini?
Well said. I would so move.
Second?
In a second, and then under discussion, Mr. Lees.
May I just ask for a clarification of the motion?
Certainly. Certainly. That we gather the information from the park, so we have hopefully some data. So that's the first thing on the list, I believe.
Okay.
Then we compile information that we heard today in a succinct letter along with that information, send it to all the representatives that David has outlined, as well as those agencies, Cal EPA, US EPA, California Air Board, and perhaps the Department of Transportation, like Rick mentioned, along with a video of the hearing today. Is that clear?
Yeah,
That's good.
Thank you.
So,
You want a second?
do you want to re-second? Do we have a second to that already?
We have a second. You're second.
Well, I seconded it, but I'll withdraw, Mr. Modi, if you'd like to second it.
I just have a comment,
Okay.
so go ahead.
Okay, so do you want to confirm?
Yes.
Your second, thank you, Mr. Modi.
Yeah, I just want to know if part of that is, we also asked Mr. Simon to go find out what he can, we talked about, you mentioned about Lassen Park, but I mean, what we can do as far as measurements and those kind of things, not that we're asking you to do them, but just find out what that process would that be part of the...
Yes, perfect. You can add that. David, do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have one other question of Mr. Lees. Mr. Lees, should anyone in the audience wish to get a copy of this video, how can they go about doing that?
There's a couple of ways to do it. The easiest and most effective way, in my opinion, is to go online. Within an hour or two, you'll be able to watch this entire meeting at any place you want to. You don't have to sit there and watch the whole 3 hours or 4 hours, but you could actually pick out different portions. So you can actually go on the Shasta County website, go online, and watch any one of our Board of Supervisor meetings. And it should be ready to go certainly within the next 2 or 3 hours. This is a little longer, so I'm giving myself a little bit of time. So.
Thank you, Mr. Lees. Supervisor Modi?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think we're going to take a vote here in a second. I wanted to add one more thing under discussion. I also wanted to personally thank Mr. Wigington for your efforts here today. I thought that you put together a very well thought out presentation, and I can tell you that I sat down and watched an hour and 20 minutes, I think, whatever it is, 110 minutes of the video. I watched all that, so I had a chance to do that as well. And I think I just would wrap it up with one little, I want to go too far with this, but I wanted to say that, this is an uphill battle for probably some of us here at the board level with this information and stuff. But I thought that the way that the speakers spoke today with respect and tried to just tell their story and not be accusing other people or attacking other groups and stuff. I mean, pretty much everybody did that. I think that helps your cause. If people don't do that, you're going to turn people off really quick, because no one's going to help you when you spit them in their eye and then ask for help. So I do appreciate that you made that effort, and I know Kathy helped you do that as well. So thank you for taking the time and effort to bring so much information to us today.
And then just under discussion, I have one question in regards to the motion that's made. It was pointed out earlier that we had in 2008 sent the material, but that it lacked the request for a response. Can we include in whatever we send not just our request, I guess our demand that there be a response to the Shasta County Board of Supervisors? Maybe there's a better way of putting that, but I think you understand my point.
In a timely manner.
Yes.
Correct. And I thought I embedded that in there, but
Oh,
if not-
maybe you
Okay.
did, maybe you did,
Okay,
and
Larry,
I
you
just
did
missed
get
it.
that. Okay, thank you.
Very good, very good. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, you have the motion in front of you. I think it's understood. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion passes unanimously. So again, thank you all for attending today. I think that you have exactly what you asked for, a platform. And that was offered and received today. And I believe that it wouldn't surprise me at all if the response is one that exceeds far the boundaries of Shasta County in terms of the platform that is offered, as evidenced by those who attended today from around the world. That's very impressive. The next item on our agenda is our closed session. And this is our closed session announcement. The Board of Supervisors will recess to a closed session to discuss the following items. We have an estimated 30 minutes more. Conference with legal counsel, existing litigations, 2 cases, Ron Clements versus County of Shasta, and Tanya Clements versus County of Shasta, a public employee appointment titled Chief Probation Officer, and conference with labor negotiator. And the negotiators are Mr. Lees, Ms. Davis, and unrepresented employee chief probation officer. At the conclusion of our closed session, we will report back in open session the results of our closed session. And as always, the doors to this meeting room will remain open and unlocked so that anybody that wishes to hear the conclusion of our closed session and announcement can do so. Again, thank you. We really appreciate the great conduct today. Thank you.